On this week's Minute with the Mayor, Matt Waligora and I tackle two of the biggest topics that City Council has had multiple discussions over: medical marijuana and a smoking vaping ban in parks. Here is Minute with the Mayor. So for this week's edition of Minute with the Mayor, we are talking a little bit more about medicinal marijuana as well as some potential smoking bans that we could see go into effect. Now, on Monday, City Council voted 4-1 to essentially go forward with allowing medicinal marijuana facilities and sales in the city. What are those next steps, Mayor Waligora? What do they look like?
The next steps are, so obviously we directed our Planning and Development Director to go back and write up and redo all of the zoning requirements that may need to be changed in order to allow medicinal marijuana facilities. And we've currently they're going to write those up for all 5 of the types of facilities that we won't get into, but that'll take some time for those to get all set, and then they'll bring those back to us at a later meeting.
And you also mentioned some ordinances in the meeting, in particular to smell, as well as there were some others mentioned. Why put those in place?
Well, because in certain, probably I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the processing centers, if we allow processing centers, there's a pretty good chance that they may put off an odor, and we want to make sure that that's not going to disturb any of the other businesses or the community as a whole. And so our attorney will look into just how we can write those up and what other communities have done just to make sure that the smell doesn't get out of hand.
So let's fast forward. Let's say ordinances are put into place, the Planning and Zoning Commission gets everything put together and ready to rock. What happens then? Is there another vote? Is there a little bit of discussion with City Council?
Yes, yeah, there'll be more because each ordinance and each of the zoning changes will need to be approved by City Council. So this is it'll stretch out a little bit, probably a couple months, and then from my understanding, then we will then at that point do the state opt-in is what they call it. So we won't actually opt in until we have everything in place and everything's voted on and everything's agreed on, and then we will let the state know that we've opted in if this continues to pass.
Why is it so important to have all your ducks in a row when moving into this process to eventually opt in?
Well, because if you don't, and let's just say for instance we opted in at our last meeting or our next meeting, and you don't have everything in place, those business owners start their process of getting licensed and permitting through the state, and if their license and permitting through the state gets approved before we're ready and they didn't have the chance to understand what our regulations were, it could be all backwards. So it's in our best interest to make sure that we do everything first on our end. That way anybody that's interested in moving in with their business will completely understand what we're doing.
So the timetable is still probably at least, if not another year out, until we could see businesses begin to start here.
Well, I wouldn't give it a year. I'm a little bit more optimistic than them, but it is government and it is state government, and so I'm gonna put something significantly less than a year on it. I certainly hope so.
Over the past few City Council meetings, there's been a lot of discussion around smoking, a ban on smoking, as well as vaping. Can you talk about why this is so important to our city parks?
Well, we've been talking about the banning of smoking, just smoking in city parks and beaches for quite a while, and I think from the vote, all 5 of us are in agreement that some are more geared towards the health effects, and that personally my biggest issue is all of the litter that gets left behind. Unfortunately, all smokers aren't as concerned about that as others, and so if we curb that, then we don't have all the butts at the splash park, we don't have all the butts at the kiddie park or any other beach or place where bands shell. And then people don't have to pick it up and it doesn't go in the water. So it's pretty important. And then, so we discussed that a couple of weeks ago, and then we had our attorney write up an ordinance for it. And in that time period of about 2 to 3 weeks, we got a lot of feedback as far as the vaping goes, because A, the health effects are the same, so it falls into the same category for the people that are concerned with that, and there's also a discharge of the jewels or what have you that are the pods and things that are in them that people are now finding all over, because it's about as popular as smoking, if not more. So we decided to just on suggestion from a lot of professionals to just include that now rather than waiting.
Now, in terms of festivals at city parks like the brown trout specifically, I know some citizens voiced their concerns over potentially having a designated smoking area and people that come in and do want to have a cigarette. How will that all work once this ban, and if this ban goes into place?
Yeah, yep, and we understand that, and so as it's written right now, and it'll come for final approval at our next meeting, it does not include the trailhead at Woodward, and there'll be 2 designated smoking areas at the marina for any guests or people that are staying there for a significant amount of time, and they'll be near the buildings that we have there now. And then for a festival like specifically the brown trout, because they have a big tent and they have an isolated area where they keep their smoking, and so what they'll have to do is just apply for a waiver of that ordinance for the time that they're going to be there, and that would be the same for any event. They could apply for a waiver and we would approve it, or at least take a look at it.
So potentially we could be seeing this get signed at the next city council meeting.
Yeah, yep, that one should be at the next meeting.
Well, thanks for taking some time. I know this was a longer bit, but we had a lot to go over, a lot of important issues coming up on the docket as we roll into summer.
Yep, absolutely. Always moving forward, Mike.
Always moving forward. Thanks for that time, Matt.
All right, thank you.
We'll have another episode of Minute with the Mayor in 2 weeks.